This is a Skewb. It turns this way and 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 this way. And despite the fact that they don't actually turn like most other cubic puzzles, they're actually quite easy to solve. It's a bit weird to get used to the way they turn, but once you know what you're doing, they're actually quite easy and fun. So I'm going to be explaining my method, and I call it my method because it's the method I use, and I thought of it independently. But it's simple enough that I'm sure it's been thought of before, although I don't actually know of anyone who's used it before I did. If you don't have a Skewb at the moment and you want to get one, I strongly recommend the Lan. This is actually a Lan. I've tried different brands including MF8, Mefferts, and some older brands, and the Lan is superior by far. Once you have a Skewb, the first thing you want to do is get used to how it sounds and feels. Most Skewbs tend to be very clicky. If this sound makes you cringe, then you might as well just give up now because you're going to be hearing it a lot, or you could just get earmuffs. So now I'm going to be showing some useful things to know about this Skewb. There are 8 different layers that turn, and they each turn around one of the 8 corners. Since they move around the corners, the centers aren't actually fixed and they move around. When you're solving a face on a Skewb, because of the way the puzzle turns, you'll always end up with either 2 diagonal corners swapped, or all the corners solved with respect to one another. You'll never actually end up with 2 adjacent corners swapped. It'll have to be 2 diagonal corners, or all of them solved, like this. One more thing is that it's actually very easy to be color neutral because it's a simple puzzle. You really only need to know what the opposite colors are, and once you have that down, it should be very easy to take full advantage of being color neutral. So once you're okay with all of that, the next thing I'll introduce is notation. I'm actually not going to be using notation to describe the moves in the solving process. I'll just be showing it so that you know how to scramble. The notation that I recommend the most is called FCN, which stands for fixed corner notation, and as the name suggests, there is a fixed corner that never turns, and it's this corner here. The notation goes like this. There are 4 different layers that turn. This one is called R, and is to the right of the fixed corner. This is L, which is to the left of the fixed corner. This is U, which is above the fixed corner, and the last corner is either B or D, and it turns around the corner that's directly opposite of the fixed corner. So from the front, it looks like this. You can actually use pyramid scrambles if you ignore the lowercase letters for tips. FCN is simple and finger tricky, which is actually really important if you're going to be scrambling a lot. Since God's number, the maximum depth of a Skewb is 11, 15-move scrambles are considered good enough for proper scrambling. There's a link in the description below that shows the notation in more detail if you need it. So my method is actually currently unnamed because I couldn't come up with a cool name for it. Some people suggested names, but I didn't like any of them, so I just ignored them. It's based on one easy 4-move algorithm, which can be used for everything depending on how many times you do it and which rotations you do in between. The algorithm resembles a sledgehammer on a 3x3, which is R prime, F R, F prime, so I'm going to be calling this the sledgehammer, and its inverse is called the hedge slammer. The sledgehammer looks like this, and its inverse looks like this. What the sledgehammer does is it preserves this side and moves around a bunch of other pieces. And the idea is that depending on how you use it, you can use it to twist corners, move centers around, or to both at the same time. I have 3 variations of my method depending on how many steps they involve. I call them the beginner, intermediate, and advanced variation, and I'm going to be going over all of them. So let's start with the beginner's variation. Like the name suggests, it's intended for people just starting out with the Skewb, and it goes like this. The first step is solving a side, which involves placing 4 corners correctly around one center. The next step involves solving the 4 remaining corners. The next step is to solve the U center, completing 2 sides. And the last step is solving the last 4 centers, and that solves the Skewb. In all 3 variations, you start with solving a side, which is just like solving a face except for the corners matter. They have to be permuted correctly. So making this side is an intuitive step, and it really just takes practice to get better at it and to get a better understanding of how to do it. To solve a side, you basically just intuitively put down corners. And it's pretty easy until the last corner. When you're stuck on the last corner, there are just 2 cases. Put the corner so that it is either here or here. When the corner is on the right side, you turn that corner counterclockwise, you put the corner in, and then you put back the corner that you just took out. and that solves that corner. When the corner's on the left side, you turn the corner clockwise, you put it in, then you put in the other corner, and that solves that. Like I said, getting good at solving a side just takes practice. When you do solves over and over again, you become good at finding ways of canceling moves and finding how to finger choke them better. The next step is to solve the 4 remaining corners. There are just 3 cases. One of them is that they're already solved, which happens in about 1 in 9 solves. The other 2 cases look like this and this. They resemble the pi and LCLL cases, and they can both be solved using only the sledgehammer. For the pi case, hold it so that the headlights are facing the right. Do the sledgehammer turning about these 2 corners. And that solves the 4 corners. When you have the L case, hold it so that you see all 4 U corners. Do the sledgehammer turning about these 2 corners. And then do a Y rotation, and then do it again about these 2 corners. And that solves the corners. The next step is to put the U center on the U face, and there's only one case if it's not solved already. You find that center, and you put it at the back. You do a sledgehammer turning about these 2 corners. Then you do a Y2 rotation, then you do it again about these 2 corners. And that solves that center on top. The last step is solving the last 4 centers, and there are 3 cases, and they resemble the EPLLs on a 3x3, which is the U perm, the Z perm, or Z perm if you're American, and H perm, or H perm if you're Tom Barlow. The algorithm used in the previous step, solving the U center, was actually a U perm, and we're going to use it again, except we're going to use it along these 4 centers. If one of the last 4 centers is already solved, you have a U perm. Hold it so that one of the unsolved centers is at the front, one's on top, and the other one's at the back. You want to make sure that the center at the front is the opposite color of the side it's on. If it's an adjacent color, do a Y2. Do a sledgehammer turning about these 2 corners, then do a Y2, then do it again around these 2 corners. If you don't have a U perm, you'll have either H or Z, and they can both be solved using only 2 U perms. Perform the U perm from any angle as long as the centers on the right and left are already solved. And it'll be reduced to another U perm. The same thing goes for an H perm. So that's it for the beginner's variation. So far I've shown 3 ways to use the sledgehammer, and in the next part I'll be showing several more, and I'll be also using its inverse, the hedge slammer. The intermediate variation is just like the beginner's variation, except for the second and third steps are combined. Instead of solving the U corners and then putting the center on top, they're all done in one step. There are 11 different cases in total, and you'll use the sledgehammer at most 3 times in this step. One of these cases is identical to what you do in the beginner's variation, and that's when you get the corners skipped. The other 10 cases are broken down into 2 sets. You have 5 pi cases and 5 L cases. The 2 easiest cases are the pi cases where the U center is touching exactly one U corner. Hold it so that the center is on the front. If the headlights are on the right, perform the sledgehammer. If the headlights are on the left, you do the hedge slammer. The next easiest case is the pi case where the U center is solved on top. Hold it so the headlights are on the left and perform the sledgehammer twice. If you want, you can also do it so the headlights are on the right, and then you do hedge slammer twice. The next 4 cases are very similar. When you have an L case where the U center is not on the top, hold it so that that center is on the right or the left. Now look at the front face and look at the corner that is not solved. If it needs to be twisted counterclockwise, you do a hedge slammer. And now reduce it to one of the easy pie cases. If instead the corner needs to be twisted clockwise, you do a sledgehammer. And once again, that'll reduce it to one of the easy pie cases. The next two cases are the two remaining pie cases. Hold so that the U center is at the back. And perform either the sledgehammer or the hedge slammer. You can choose which one. Now I'll reduce it to one of the L cases I showed earlier. This is the other pie case where you do the same thing. You hold it so that the U center is at the back. Then you perform either the sledgehammer or the hedge slammer. And that'll make it one of the L cases. The very last case is the L case where the U center is solved. Hold it from any of the four angles. If the unsolved corner touching the front needs to be twisted clockwise, do a hedge slammer. And now reduce it to one of the L cases. If the corner on the front needs to be twisted counterclockwise, you do a sledgehammer. And I will also reduce it to one of the L cases. That's all you need to know for the intermediate variation. Since there are a few cases where you can actually choose what to do, you should actually figure out for yourself which one you find easier, the sledgehammer or the hedge slammer. For me, I prefer the sledgehammer, so I favor it because I find it easier and faster to perform, but it could be the other way around, so make sure you try both out and see which one you like more. The advanced variation is where it gets significantly harder. This only has two steps. The first step is solving a side, and the last step is solving everything else. It sounds like it's a lot of work to learn, and it really is. It's 134 cases, but it's actually surprisingly easier than you might expect. There are lots of patterns that can help with remembering what the algs are, but I don't actually recommend learning this in full unless you really want to get into Skewb. I have generated the algorithms for all the cases using just the sledgehammer and the hedge slammer with rotations in between, and I found that you only need to do them at most 5 times. The main key to being fast with my method is to be able to do the sledgehammer and hedge slammer really quickly. The way I actually do it is I hold so that the side is here on this angle, then I grip the corner like this, I turn it, then I follow into the next move, then I re-grip again, and then turn like this, and then back like that. And it's really different than what most people I've taught use. Everyone I've taught does it differently, and so you should definitely find out for yourself the way you want to do it. You can do it like this, but it's very awkward, and I prefer holding it on an angle. There's one main problem with practicing Skewb a lot, and that's that you begin to lose your ability to turn other puzzles. If you intend to really get into Skewb, I'd suggest that you learn algorithms slowly and be aware that it can affect your ability to turn other puzzles. Once you're in a Skewb turning zone, it may take some time to get out of. Other than that, Skewb is a really fun puzzle. The current unofficial world record average of 12 is 5.62 seconds set by Othgeroth Anderson, also known as Otter. He actually uses the intermediate version of my method, which he learned off my website, so that's pretty cool. So I think that's everything I need to say. Hopefully I covered everything well. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. So feel free to ask any questions you may have about it. And that's all. So bye.